Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum dear viewers. This is the second module of the course Zakat. In this module we will cover three topics. The first of them will relate to the Sharia of the Zakat. Then we will look at some of the ahadith which have been reported by narrators regarding Zakat. And finally we'll look at some of the misconceptions which are found about this worship ritual. As far as the Sharia of Zakat is concerned, if we base this understanding on the ijma and tawatur of the ummah, which means that their consensus and their perpetual practice in this regard, then we can see that this Sharia can be understood on the basis of some of these important statutes. So the first of these statutes is that nothing except the following are exempt from Zakat. So the exemption of Zakat, there are just three of them that which have to be understood. So the first of them is tools of production, trade and business. So all tools of production and of course trade and business, they are exempted. The second is that items of personal use, all kinds of items which we use personally, our personal house, cars, our clothes, our belongings, all of them, and there could be more than one in number if we talk about cars and houses. So as far as all personal belongings are concerned, they are exempted. The third is that a fixed quantity is also exempted, which is called nisab. We shall presently also discuss it. But zakat shall be collected annually on wealth of all sorts, livestock of all types, and produce of all forms of every Muslim citizen who is liable to it. So next statute is that we will look at the rates of the zakat which have been handed out to us through the ijma and tawatur, or the consensus and practical perpetuation of the ummah. So 2.5% is the amount which is levied on wealth annually. So once in the year you have to pay it. You have to fix any day of the year, and then subsequently on that particular day you have to pay 2.5% of wealth that you own at that day. Produce. So the produce of is actually taxed at three rates. So it's 5, 10 and 20%. So 5% is the rate of produce on all items which are produced by the interaction of both labor and capital. And it is 10% on items which are produced such that the basic factor in producing them is either labor or capital. And 20% is the rate of this zakat, which are produced neither as a result of capital nor labor, but are actually a gift of God. The third thing is livestock. So we have discussed wealth, it's 2.5%. We have discussed produce, it has three rates depending upon the nature of production. So 5, 10 and 20%. Now the third asset or entity which is to be zakatable is livestock, and a list of these is available in your write-up, and I'm not going to read that through, because you can just read it in your written modules. And so we've covered two statutes so far. We've seen that as far as as zakat is concerned, what the exemptions are. We have seen the rates of zakat, and now we come to the third statute in this Sharia. And this third statute actually relates to the heads of zakat, in which it can be spent. It was always spent on the poor and needy, on the collective requirements of people. But when the hypocrites of the times of the Prophet, they raised certain doubts about it, regarding these heads, the Quran once again just unequivocally stated them, so that there remains no confusion. They were already known. And this is the Quranic verse in which it was stated, and these heads were stated. It says, إِنَّمَا الصَّدَقَاتُ لِلْفُقَرَاءِ وَالْمَسَاقِينِ وَالْعَامِلِينَ عَلَيْهَا وَالْمُؤَلَّفَةِ قُلُوبِهِمْ وفي الرقاب والغارمين وفي سبيل الله وابن السبيل فريضة من الله والله عليم حكيم. Zakat is only for the poor and the needy, and for those who are amils over it, and for those whose hearts are to be reconciled to the truth, and for the emancipation of the slaves, and for those who have been inflicted with losses, and for the way of God, and for the welfare of the wayfarers. This is an obligation decreed by God, and God is all-knowing and wise. So just a brief description of these heads. Of course, we know al-fuqara wal-masakeen, they relate to the poor and the needy. The second head is al-amilina alayha, which of course relates to the salaries of all the employees of the state, the machinery of the state. Al-Mu'allafati qulubuhum, all political expenditure which is to be done in the interest of Islam and Muslims. Then we have a fir riqab, which means the emancipation of slavery from all kinds. Al-Gharimin, this is for helping people who are suffering from economic losses or are burdened with a fine or loan. And then we have fi sabilillah, which is for serving Islam and for the welfare of the citizens. And Ibn Sabil, of course, relates to the traveler, for helping travelers and for the construction of roads, bridges, and rest houses, which of course amounts to their welfare as well. The fourth statute in this regard is that we also want to know that what exactly is the Sadaqatul Fitr. So this is one form of zakat actually, which is paid after, which is just paid before the Eid prayer, and it is the food of a person. It is said which a person consumes a day. So if I want to give my Sadaqatul Fitr, it would be the amount of food that I consume each day. And if I'm not going to give that food, or I'm not in a position to give that, I would like to give cash, that's also possible. So the amount equivalent in cash or the food itself that is consumed in one day by a person. And a narrative attributed to Abdullah ibn Abbas says that the Prophet has made it mandatory for every Muslim, and the reason is that it cleanses the fast from the effects of lewd and nonsensical talk, and to provide food to the poor on Eid day. So in the times of the Prophet was generally given in the form of grain. Consequently, he had fixed its quantity at 1 sa', which is equivalent to about 2.5 kilograms. So this is what the Prophet had fixed in his own times. So of course, as he shall go along, this quantity regarding the daily consumption, it depends on how much a person himself is consuming. So this is what in his times a person would generally consume to be 2.5 kilograms of grain. Viewers, we next come to the second topic of this course, and this module in fact, and that is which are some of the ahadith which have been reported in this regard by the Prophet, from the Prophet. So Abu Huraira anhu narrates that the Prophet said, "He who was given wealth by the Almighty and he did not pay its zakat, this wealth will be made into a bald snake for him, on whose eyes there will be 2 black dots. And on the day of judgment his neck shall be shackled with this snake. Then he will clasp his cheeks and say, I am your wealth, I am your treasure." So this is a very scary narrative which tells us that people who are negligent in paying zakat, how they will be dealt on the day of judgment. Abu Zar Ghifari narrates that the Prophet said, "A person who has camels, cows and goats, and he does not pay the right imposed on them, then these animals will be brought before him on the day of judgment, such that they will be very large and fat. They will stamp him from below their feet and strike him with their horns. When the first will pass, the next will take its place. This will keep happening until the day of judgment is delivered for all the people." Again, something very, very admonishing with regard to people who are negligent in paying zakat. Now we come to the third topic of this module, and these are some misconceptions actually which are found regarding this concept. So the first thing in this regard is that there is no basis of tamlik zati, which means exclusive personal possession. In other words, people think that you have to give zakat to an individual only, and you cannot give it to institutions or to some collective purpose. This is incorrect. And for details, of course, I can refer you to Ustaz Amin Hassan Islahi's book on this matter, which is called Maslai Tamlik, or the issue of Tamlik, or you can look up his explanation of this verse in his tafsir, which is Tadabbur Quran. This is the first misconception. The second is regarding zakat, which is generally said that it should not be given to the to the family of the Prophet, the Banu Hashim or the Sayyids. Now, again, we have to understand that the Prophet himself in his own lifetime had prohibited his own family from receiving zakat, because for him, a portion from the fey wealth was fixed, and it was basically for his own self and his family. But this was for his own family. So once he has passed away and his family has passed away, this restriction has been lifted. And perhaps the reason for this restriction was that, you can clearly see that because Prophet had another means of income which was fixed by the Almighty in the wealth of fay, which is fay actually. Fay is the wealth which is obtained when you attack an enemy, and without any resistance they yield to the attacking Muslim army. The directive regarding the spoils of war or the Ghanaim is also no different. So today, if the Banu Hashim are present, they can be easily given zakat, and it is not correct to say that the Hashemites or the Sayyids cannot be given zakat. So thirdly, there are certain exemptions which a state can make. We just discussed them earlier on in the Nisab, destitutory exemptions. The Prophet fixed them in his own times, but today they can be changed. An Islamic state can change them for regarding the in consideration with the situation which is in our times. So the Nisab which the Prophets fixed was 5 uqiyas, or 642 grams of silver in the case of wealth. In the case of produce, it was 650 kilograms of dates. In the case of livestock, it was 5 camels or 30 cows or 40 goats. So the fourth misconception in this regard is that generally produce is just regarded to be agricultural produce. However, today with the advent of so many modern forms of production, it's not just agricultural produce that should be regarded as production. So industrial produce of all kind, production of all forms based on skills, rent, salaries, service charges and fees of all forms obtained in various ventures must be classified as produce and not as wealth. So the rent that you receive, for example, or the salaries that you receive, the industrial produce, they must be classified under produce, and their rates should be the same as the produce rates. And again, by analogy, if any industry is giving a produce in which both labor and capital are involved, then 5%. If either one is missing, then 10%. So this is a case of analogy from agricultural produce. And the final thing that has to be understood is that zakat on leased out houses and properties and other items should also be 10%, because it is basically a production, and in this production this is being received because one form of production, which is labor, is missing. So we will levy zakat on 10% of the amount of rent which a rented premises is giving the owner. So in a nutshell, we can now see that as far as zakat is concerned, it is on these 3 heads. It is on wealth, it is on produce, it is on livestock. And on all these 3 heads, the rates are different and the mannerism of giving them is different. In the case of wealth, it is annually. In the case of produce, it is at the time of produce. And in the case of livestock, also it is a case of annual zakat giving. So this brings us to an end to the second module of the course, Zakat.